The Imminent Threat. Kurt Jensen, CEO of First Stage Security, also known as the Fixer, felt the weight of Paul David's words settle heavily upon him. 20 lead-lined containers holding cesium-137 isotope containers had been stolen, lethally dangerous in the wrong hands. International Logging Incorporated, an oilfield electric wireline company, seemed an unlikely target for such a sophisticated theft. America was now facing a potential dirty bomb scenario. A signed contract sat on the polished mahogany table, a stark reminder of the stakes. A $500,000 advance to First Stage Security for expenses, and a $5 million reward for the safe return of all 20 cesium-137 isotope containers. Paul told Kurt that these isotopes were essential for logging frac wells, were handled by highly trained and monitored personnel, and their use was meticulously governed by International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) guidelines. Kurt told Paul that he had a degree in petroleum engineering from Texas A&M, but joined the Marine Corps instead of working in the oil field, so I know all about your company's expertise. The idea extremists had these isotopes was a chilling thought. Our intel is that these guys are a highly organized group. They bypassed every security measure you had. Kurt leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Paul. Do you have any ideas who might be behind this, or any unusual activity around the Houston warehouse in the weeks leading up to the theft? Paul sighed, rubbing his temples. Our security team is pulling all surveillance footage, but so far, nothing concrete. We're in the dark. Kurt, time is our enemy. Kurt nodded, his mind already racing through scenarios. The immediate priority was to understand the modus operandi of the thieves. How did they get in? What route did they take? And most critically, where would they try to move this dangerous cargo? The clock was ticking, and the fate of countless lives potentially hung in the balance. First Stage Security had its work cut out for it. Kurt wasted no time. He immediately dispatched his two top agents, Wendy and Mike, from the Houston office. Their first objective: the warehouse. International Logging Inc. E's warehouse security personnel had already secured the site. Kurt wanted fresh eyes, unburdened by the panic that must have set in. Upon arrival, Wendy, a former Marine Corps military police forensics specialist, began meticulously examining the entry point. The main access door, despite being reinforced steel, was the first entry point using a sophisticated thermal torch, a clean cut, almost surgical. They had melted the door hinges off, leaving the door leaning against a wall. She reported her findings to Kurt on a secure satellite phone piggybacked via an Israeli satellite. Kurt had friends in all the intelligence agencies. He didn't want the NSA or IRS looking into his business. It was Mossad that had once rescued Kurt from Hamas terrorists while he was on assignment at the American Embassy in Tel Aviv after Desert Storm as a Marine Security Guard MSG officer, and where he met Ziva David, a Mossad agent. They had been lovers. Now, 20 years later, Ziva was head of Mossad in Tel Aviv. She was someone Kurt could trust with his life, and he had worked on plenty of cases with Ziva in the past. Wendy said this wasn't a smash and grab. It was well planned by trained personnel. Meanwhile, Mike, an ex-SEAL and veteran of many black ops with an uncanny ability to read a scene, walked the perimeter, his eyes scanning every shadow and every discarded item. He found it near a less-used service road. Faint, almost imperceptible tire tracks in the damp soil, larger than standard commercial vehicles. Looks like they had heavy-duty transport, Kurt. Mike's voice crackled. Just one truck. The isotope containers, though relatively small, were shielded in lead and heavy. Moving 20 of them quickly and quietly required significant effort and specialized equipment. Paul David had confirmed the warehouse's internal surveillance system had been expertly disabled minutes before the breach. Any signs of where they went? Kurt asked, envisioning the trucks disappearing into the vast network of Houston highways. Negative on the direction, Sarah replied, a note of frustration in her voice. They left almost no forensic trace beyond the breach itself. It's like they vanished into thin air after getting inside. No drop tools, no fibers, and no DNA, nothing. Mike, however, had one more detail. There's a faint, almost metallic smell near the loading bay. Something industrial, not typical stored in the warehouse. And I found this. He held up a small, dark, crystalline shard, no bigger than a fingernail. It wasn't metal, but had a metallic sheen. Looks like a fragment of some kind of high-grade composite material. Not from the trucks or anything in the warehouse inventory. Kurt's mind immediately went to the possibility of a custom-built vehicle or equipment. This was no amateur job. The professionalism of the theft, combined with the extreme danger of the cargo, sent a chill down Kurt's spine. He knew this was just the beginning of a very long, very dangerous hunt. Back at First Stage Security's office, Anna, Kurt's sister and head of IT, was already deep in the digital trenches. While Kurt's field agents scoured the physical world, Anna's domain was the hidden layers of the internet. Kurt had just spent $2 million bringing the Houston IT department up to the same standard as the new Dubai office, which they called the Knowledge Box. The Houston office was a larger room with 10 large monitors and a large mainframe computer that used space on an Israeli satellite. It in some ways was more sophisticated than what the NSA had at their disposal. Hours later, Anna's voice came over the intercom in Kurt's office. "Kurt, you need to see this." Anna's voice was tight with urgency as she patched her screen to his monitor. "I've been sifting through the dark web, specifically forums and marketplaces known for illicit trade in high-value goods. And I found something." On the screen, a cryptic forum post flickered. No direct mention of isotopes, but the coded language, the astronomical price, and the specific reference to sealed, high-density industrial sources, quantity 20 units, left no doubt. An organized crime syndicate, boasting about their new merchandise, was offering the stolen radioactive material for a staggering $50 million. The post even included a blurred image that, to Kurt's trained eye, appeared to be the distinctive yellow casing of an isotope container. Kurt felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't just a theft anymore. It was an active auction of a dirty bomb. As Paul David feared, extremists didn't need to steal the materials if they could simply buy them. "An organized crime syndicate," Kurt murmured, his jaw tightened. "For $50 million. They're not looking to build a bomb themselves. They're looking to profit from fear." Kurt knew he couldn't handle this alone. The moment radioactive materials appeared on the black market, it became a matter of national and international security. His private security firm had limits, both legally and operationally, when it came to dealing with such a threat. He immediately contacted his high-level contacts within the NSA, FBI, and CIA. The severity of the situation meant no red tape. A joint task force was assembled with unprecedented speed. Kurt laid out Anna's findings, along with Sarah and Mike's forensic intelligence, confirming the professionalism of the thieves. The feds were initially hesitant about a private entity taking the lead on a dark web operation involving WMD-capable materials, but Kurt's expertise and the immediate danger swayed them. First Stage Security would spearhead the digital side, while the FBI provided crucial legal backing and operational support for the eventual physical recovery. "Anna," Kurt began, once the feds had agreed to the plan, "we're set up the purchase. We'll use Bitcoin, as they requested." Anna's brow furrowed. Bitcoin is pseudonymous, Kurt, not anonymous. But they're likely using mixers and multiple wallets. Tracing it won't be straightforward. "Precisely," Kurt agreed. "But every transaction on the blockchain leaves a public record. Our goal isn't just to buy it back. It's to follow the money, identify the network, and dismantle it." The $500,000 advance from International Logging Inc. would cover the initial setup for the Bitcoin payment. For the full $50 million, the FBI, seeing the critical national security implications, agreed to provide clean cryptocurrency through a seized wallet. This would be payment not just for the isotopes, but for intelligence and, ultimately, the neutralization of the threat. Anna, working closely with the FBI's Cyber Forensics Unit, began the intricate dance of the dark web negotiation. She established a secure, anonymous channel with the syndicate's contact. The price was haggled, small details exchanged, and eventually a meeting point for the exchange was proposed, not a physical one, but a specific series of Bitcoin addresses. The payment was set up to be transferred. The first small payment of $1 million was sent as a good faith deposit. Anna immediately initiated advanced blockchain analysis, utilizing sophisticated clustering algorithms and graph analysis tools. She tracked the deposit as it moved through several intermediary wallets, then through a mixing service, before landing in a larger, seemingly central wallet. This was the syndicate's hub, and it immediately became Anna's prime target. The FBI used its own intelligence to cross-reference addresses and patterns with known criminal entities, slowly building a profile. Anna and the FBI's crypto experts meticulously linked numerous smaller wallets to the central hub based on transaction patterns, timings, and shared funding sources. They suspected these smaller wallets belonged to different members of the syndicate or were used to further confuse the trail. The weakest link in Bitcoin anonymity is usually the point where cryptocurrency is converted to fiat currency, regular money, or first acquired. The team focused on identifying if any of the associated wallets interacted with regulated cryptocurrency exchanges, which often require Know Your Customer (KYC) verification. Even if the syndicate used offshore exchanges, the connections still provided data points. While heavily masked by Tor and VPNs, every interaction on the dark web leaves some fleeting IP residue. Using advanced network forensics, Anna's team searched for any patterns, however fleeting, that might indicate geographical origins or specific network infrastructure. The composite shard Mike found earlier was also run through various databases, searching for any connection to known criminal tech or specialized industrial operations. The syndicate, confident in their anonymity, became bolder. They provided a detailed logistical plan for the transfer of the isotopes, demanding the next transaction of Bitcoin. The plan involved a series of drops, culminating in a final pickup at an abandoned industrial complex outside Juarez, Mexico, a known hotspot for cartel activity and a convenient transit point for illicit goods. This confirmed Kurt's suspicion. This was a large, geographically dispersed organization. Anna's continued tracing of the Bitcoin payments, particularly the movements from the central hub, began to reveal patterns. Larger sums moved less frequently, suggesting higher-level control. One particular set of transactions repeatedly connected to a series of wallets that showed unusual activity. Sporadic, large payouts to what appeared to be personal wallets, and interactions with legitimate though obscure online services like luxury car dealerships and private jet charter companies. This was the first glimmer of the individuals at the top. The FBI, leveraging the Bitcoin tracing and their own human intelligence networks, started to piece together the real-world identities behind these high-value wallets. One specific address, consistently receiving significant sums from the isotope sale proceeds, showed a pattern of payouts to a shell corporation in Panama, which in turn had links to a known former cartel financier, a ghost known as El Fantasma. His previous operations involved high-value contraband, but never anything as dangerous as radioactive material. This indicated a new, terrifying expansion of his criminal empire or a desperate need for capital. The final phase of the Bitcoin payment was initiated, acting as the trigger for the physical recovery operation. As the last major transaction of Bitcoin hit the central hub, Kurt and his field team, accompanied by a heavily armed FBI hostage rescue team HRT and hazmat specialists, moved on the Juarez industrial complex. The operation was executed with surgical precision. The initial Bitcoin transfer acted as a digital tripwire. As the syndicate began to confirm the final payment and prepare the isotopes for transport, the joint teams stormed the complex. Resistance was swift but ultimately futile against the overwhelming force. The isotopes were secured, handled with extreme care by the hazmat specialists who quickly confirmed their integrity. Back in the office, Anna confirmed the breakthrough. The final Bitcoin payment, meticulously tracked, revealed the ultimate destination: a series of offshore accounts linked directly to a powerful, shadowy figure. While El Fantasma was the financier, the digital trail eventually led to a more elusive individual, a highly skilled former intelligence operative, disgraced and operating under multiple aliases, who had clearly masterminded the logistical nightmare of the theft and the dark web sale. His expertise in security vulnerabilities and covert operations made him the true brains behind the heist. Kurt had recovered the isotopes, saving countless lives. The $5 million reward was secured for first-stage security, but more importantly, the operation had provided federal agencies with the intelligence needed to dismantle a dangerous global syndicate and identify its elusive leader. The process of eliminating the organization had begun not with a bullet, but with a Bitcoin transaction, meticulously tracked through the digital shadows until the real-world identities of the masterminds were unveiled. Later that week, as the dust began to settle on the successful recovery operation, a story broke that sent a ripple through the upper echelons of the criminal underworld and legitimate society alike. The headline blared from the New York Times: Tycoon Patrick Nilsson found dead in billionaire's row penthouse. Foul play not ruled out. The article detailed the discovery of Mr. Nilsson, a well-known arms dealer, at his luxurious penthouse apartment on Billionaire's Row. At just 47, his sudden demise was officially attributed to a heart attack, but the subtle phrase "foul play was not ruled out" spoke volumes to those in the know. Kurt saw the news alert on his tablet. He leaned back in his chair, a grim satisfaction settling over him. He had never heard the name Patrick Nilsson before, but Anna's detailed blockchain analysis and the FBI's cross-referencing had revealed much about the syndicate's ultimate beneficiary. El Fantasma was the financier, the operational muscle. But the true architect of the scheme, the one who received the largest, most carefully laundered Bitcoin payouts from the isotope sale, was indeed a high-profile, legitimate on the surface businessman with a dark past in illicit dealings. The composite shard Mike found at the warehouse now made chilling sense. Nilsson's company, ostensibly a legitimate defense contractor, had been known for its cutting-edge materials and specialized transport solutions, often for highly sensitive cargo. He wouldn't have been involved in the direct theft, but his resources, his network, and his technical knowledge would have been instrumental. Kurt didn't need official confirmation. The FBI would investigate Nilsson's death with extreme prejudice, given his profile and the hint of foul play. They would dig into his finances, his associates, and his recent activities, likely finding the same digital breadcrumbs Anna had already uncovered. The heart attack was likely a convenient cover, a final, lethal message from someone who felt betrayed, or perhaps someone else cleaning up loose ends in the wake of the isotope recovery. The elimination of the organization had indeed begun. Nilsson's death was a potent signal that the shadowy figures who dealt in WMDs were now facing consequences. Kurt felt the cold satisfaction of a mission accomplished, knowing that while the public might never know the full story, the world was a little safer. The ripples from first-stage security's sting operation were just beginning to spread through the criminal underworld, and Patrick Nilsson was simply the first, most public casualty.